Folks, hello. It is Feels Friday. It is Chill Out Friday, so we're having a bit of a chill out background today instead of the normal 40k things of daring do going against Tyranids and all sorts. No, we're going to be doing a little bit of relaxing today with a single hobby nightmare that is taking us back to Vampire the Masquerade. More and more of these have been coming in over the past couple of weeks. So Liam has wrote in to give us his exaltations of what he's been doing in Vampire the Masquerade, and maybe a hobby nightmare that I read half of last night, got very excited when I saw the rest, and put it down to read the rest of it today live with you. So, let's jump into the hobby nightmare with Liam. No worries. He says, "Howdy North. I didn't expect to write again to you so soon. However, recently, a months-long campaign has come to an end in a way that might be considered a horror story, depending on your point of view. Or, it's Vampire the Masquerade played exactly as intended. You decide. Alright, cool. For about 6 months, I have been in a Vampire 20th game. The GM was quite a guy and pitched it as newcomers in this... Sorry, I'm going to have to read that again. The GM was quite the guy and pitched it as newcomers in this fictional city in somewhere USA. It was basically about the various powers of the setting coming together on the same spot at the same time in a new place, and vampire politics ensue to gain total domination over the city. The first problem was something I noticed at the very start. However, I was willing to just roll with it, since it sounded quite interesting. The GM had a laissez-faire play-what-you-want attitude, due to the whole premise being about all these groups showing up roughly at the same time. I tried to ask for details on the plot, as well as what would be okay to play in relation to the timeline of this fictional city. Essentially, I did not want to play a guy who had been there for 5 years if the vampires just showed up 3 years ago. Details like that. He told me to come up with a character I would enjoy playing first, and we would hammer out the details a little bit later on, as long as the character concept was not too outlandish. Okay, bad advice. Bad advice. Okay, so if you are a GM, a game master, dungeon master, don't ever do this, okay? Make sure that your people coming into your game have a cheat sheet. They know what to expect by the characters that you need to create for the game, right? So basically, the game I'm writing right now has an entire section on, hey, these are the kind of characters who work really well in the game. These are the kind of characters who don't really work really well in the game. You know what I mean? If you have your own setting or your own city or whatever you want what you want to go with, make a cheat sheet. Make a list of bullet points of things to avoid with your character and normal things your character would know if they're from this city or they come to this city. Very, very important. It's why I love games where the lore section of it is separated into two, right? So there's lore section, the foundational lore, which is basically everything every character should know, and then there's the further lore. So if you find an aspect of the lore interesting, maybe flick forward and read about that bit of lore that you can say, my character knows about this particular thing because he is a knight from this place or whatever, right? That's the good way to do it. A brilliant way to get your characters and your players involved is to make sure that you sit them down and you say, listen, here are the things I don't want you to do, right? Here are the things that are likely to derail the game, so don't do them. Everything else on the list, cool, go for it. Right. Be very, very, very clear about your expectations about the game. What this GM has not done is that. He's been very vague about his expectations, and I think it may blow up in his face. We'll see. Carrying on. I cannot remember the full context of how and why character creation went the way it did, but essentially, I was in a scenario where all I could take for my character was generation resources and Black Hand membership. That last one intrigued me the most, and I asked if Black Hand membership was allowed, to which the GM said yes. Okay, please explain what that is. This led to me and a friend who would join the game with me, both creating characters of the Black Hand. We were quite similar, being shovelheads who accidentally survived and somehow ended up in the game. Both of us decided to make mortal characters effectively and then randomly rolled our clan, since being shovelheaded left no choice or consideration. My character was an academic with social skills, a college tutor who moonlit as a hacktivist investigator. He became a gangrel as the story went on. My friend was a Marine veteran and bank employee who ended up in the Toreador. Alright, so we've got a vampire ranger who likes animals in the gangrel, and a vampire, shall we say, singer or poet or artistic person in a Toreador. Okay. Who used to be a Marine veteran. Okay, alright, pretty cool. We had a shared backstory where we were in some huge battle and ended up working our way into the Black Hand, the proper militant wing of the Sabbat. Oh, okay. Well, thanks for explaining that. So the Sabbat are the mental people who want to take over the world. And if you're the militant wing of that, yeah, you're pretty crazy. We work with the Game Master, and he made this really cool story where the pair of us were forward scouts for the Sabbat, going into this new city after its revitalization project. Basically, the city was a forgotten crap heap that was injected with new money and business interests in an attempt to heal economic damage from COVID. Alright, that's clever. We were posing as autarchs, sectless vampires. Sectless, not sexless before any of you start rolling your eyes. Who were simply trying to be left alone, while in reality we were looking for info on the other sects and how to best plan a proper invasion of the city. Alright, I like this. I like this so far. When we all came together, the party makeup was something like this. Sabbat Gangrel, me. Sabbat Toreador, my friend. A normal Toreador, a normal Bruja, a normal Ventru, a normal Tremere, a normal Kwai Jin, and the second Kwai Jin. Yes, this is quite a large game. However, several of the players knew the Game Master and insisted that this was fine and normal for them, and he himself pointed out the depth of political and social dynamics from such a large and diverse group. Fair enough, I thought. I won't judge without trying, and I stayed with it. Yeah, dude, that is a big game, though. That is 8 people. That is a huge game. Things started off a bit tense in Session 1. Toreador was a literal child. Imagine a 10 to 12-year-old girl wearing a hoodie, playing Hot Topic music with emo written on her forehead, and you have the sort of energy this girl exhibited. I explain this to get an idea of the attitude of this character. Sounds like a living hell. The GM started off the game with scenes of all of us hunting, intent on us all meeting up. My character, being a gangrel on the path of the beast, was out in this yuppie forested area used for skeet shooting and golf. There, the animals were well fed, healthy, and great to eat. I started off very reserved, unsure as to what other predators lurked in the new city, so I stuck to the fringes and fed on animals until I could gather information. Toreador Child was there due to her baiting... I'm not going to say that word, but you know what I mean. Baiting predators of a different sort. Right? Yeah. Due to baiting we'll call them human predators of the young. Yes, okay. Toreador Child was there due to her baiting predators, going back to their rich homes to finally drink their blood and drain them. Then stole some of their things to pawn off later. This is how she supported herself financially. Dude, that is a very controversial way to play a character. But it is kind of genius. Do you know what I mean? I'm not sure how I feel about an adult playing that kind of character and leaning into that kind of thing. But I also like the fact that the predators involved are getting their comeuppance. Do you know what I mean? Like, and she's getting like a lot of money from it. It's kind of genius. Anyway, moving on. GM put Gangrel and Toreador Child nearby according to the laws of RPG etiquette. I attempted to approach her, recognizing her as a Canaanite, a vampire. Toreador Child did not like this, and did this whole thing where she was worried about a grown man approaching her, screaming to draw attention and make me look like a bad guy. I wasn't sure how to respond to that since I, in real life, make it a mission to, you know, avoid children. Lest I risk punting them across the field. Oh, wow. Okay, right. The GM said I could roll instinct to get an idea of what to do. I do not roll well. I realise what she is doing, and realising she's acting in a way very intentionally, if indirectly harmful to me. This makes her a threat. Being threatened, I lash out at her. Session 1, we have a Toreador child and Gangrel player versus player combat. I love this. As you can imagine, things do not go well for Toreador child. She eventually tries to argue down difficulty by pointing out how she is small and has clarity. Okay. Or celerity. GM allows this, and I'm pretty sure to prevent her from dying in session 1. She rolls to get away, and I'm fine with it since, at the end of the day, I'm here to play a game and don't really want to kill people I'm playing with for no reason. She then says, "What, aren't you going to chase me?" I'm surprised by this and explain that the interaction is kind of funny, but I don't really like PvP, like at all. I'm not opposed to it, and I understand it can be cool if narratively impactful, but I still don't like the idea of fighting people who I am there to have a cooperative gaming experience with. Still, Toreador Child wants me to roll, to make it real, quote-unquote, when she gets away. So I roll, and the GM on his own decides to continue using similar logic that Toreador Child used to give me a lower difficulty to chase her. Essentially, she wanted to get away easily because she was small, but GM then ruled I could chase her easily because she is a child and I'm a grown man with more points and celerity than she had. You're going to end up killing her, aren't you? Q Gangrel immediately pouncing and mauling Toreador Child into torpor. So torpor, for those of you who don't know, is what vampires go into when they've sustained too much damage. So they basically go into this like coma-like state. Since she is a threat trying to escape, and there are motion lights coming on while dogs are barking, the GM calls for me to make an instinct check to see if I panic. I pass this time, and the GM tells me how Toreador Child is a higher generation than me, so diablerizing her would do nothing to me. In my clear-minded state, I realise that there are people approaching in a large group who might be a larger threat than the near-dead vampire on the grass in front of me. So Gangrel gets up and flees, essentially ending his scene for that part. Later on in session 1, my friend, Sabbat Toreador, shows up and finds me lurking around in the city. We spent time, for the rest of session 1, finding a haven and setting up near a college campus for easy access to prey. While the session overall was fun, this scene structure the GM used had quickly broken apart the party into 3 distinct threads, like plots of a television series. You had the Kwai-Jin plot, with Kwai-Jin 1 and 2 meeting with the Hecata in the city. The Hecata are independent vampires who, until recently, had a kind of non-aggression pact with the Camarilla, who are the main vampire people in the setting. Okay. As that NAP has now expired, non-aggression pact has now expired, they're worried about the large Camarilla presence, and the Kwai-Jin decide to act as emissaries for their group, trying to build a bridge and a Hector-Kwai-Jin alliance. You had the Camarilla plot, with Toreador Child, Bruja, Ventru, and Tremere working to unite the fragmented Anarchs, who are like vampires who want to be left alone, just long enough to support the Camarilla incursion against their shared enemy, the Hecata, who were currently the main power in the city, having been there since before its revitalization. This involved a lot of ghouls, contracts, insinuating into institutions, the usual Vampire the Masquerade power play shenanigans. Okay, cool. Alright. You had the Sabbat plot, where Sabbat Toreador and Sabbat Gangrel, us, scouted out various institutions, both legal and criminal, for signs of Camarilla, Anarch, or Hecata presence. We laid low while sending reports back to our handler, and while getting tips on how to proceed as we gained more information on the powers at play. As we were trying not to make waves in the vampire scene, we were the most human story. Ironically, with us dealing with criminals, gangs, stealing things, breaking and entering, and generally being ruffians who nobody would suspect were vampires. During this time, we also gained a large social network around the university. However, we did not ghoul anyone out of fear of leaving a distinct trail. We simply were social butterflies who looked normal just long enough to make friends. Okay. Dude, you're playing like the ideal vampires then, right? Literally what you're doing. For the first few sessions, the Kwai Jin and Camarilla plots got a lot of traction, whilst the Sabbat plot was something of meandering along, hindered by the fact we were always a step behind the other two, reacting to what they were doing as we gained information. Things got sour eventually, as Kwai Jin were planting oddly specific seeds to sabotage the hideout and info gathering techniques Sabbat, Toreador and Gangrel were utilising. It's hard to summarise, but essentially, it was metagaming garbage. We tried to call them on it, since we were pretty sure they had no evidence of us spying on them, or even being in the city. This suspicion was confirmed when they said they were simply being paranoid, that they were simply being paranoid instead of citing actual reasons to suspect anything. They claimed to be laying traps and putting down false leads for any spies, not just us. It was just a coincidence that their false leads and traps were only ever placed in ways to impede us and not the other antagonists from the Kwai Jin plot. This seems like the role-playing version of, you know, those guys that I really don't like, the ones who technically aren't cheating, but they're literally not playing the game in the spirit of the game at all. Yeah, this is the RPG version of that. This was annoying enough, but then the Camarilla plot started doing the same thing. It was overt metagaming, where they were sending their ghouls to harass NPCs in the Sabbat story by name, who they had never met or done anything to interact with. As I said, we had not even made ghouls and were simply getting humans to help us with our Patrick Bateman tier charm abilities as vampires. This included things like ghoul police serving Ventru, showing up to campus to harass people, targeted by name, who were being used to gain info during the day or who were involved in protecting our haven. When I tried calling this out again, the Camarilla players also insisted they were just being paranoid, and reiterated they did not know about other rival vampires besides the Kwai Jin, and their actions were perfectly in keeping with their ongoing plot and characters. Bullshit. This culminated in Toreador Child using boons with Ventru to dick with Gangrel specifically. I had 2 touchstones. College students who I tutored at night to appear normal, who had become aware of Gangrel and Sabbat Toreador as vampires. Due to the 2 Sabbat PCs lying low after massacring a cartel operation, we sent those 2 out with money to go buy some supplies we needed for another thing, and also gain information from an informant. They were intercepted by ghoul police dispatched by Ventru on a boon from Toreador Child. The ghoul cops quickly searched them and detained them on trumped-up charges, as they were instructed to do, eventually removing the 2 most valuable agents the Sabbat characters had from the game entirely. The informant, who was basically a quest giver we were trying to turn a quest into, was also detained. Where in the hell is your game master in all this? See what I'm saying? At this point, I honestly considered just dropping the game. Playing the Sabbat spy story was legit tons of fun, but the intrusions from the others became incredibly annoying and were being done to deliberately undercut the momentum and accomplishment from the Sabbat story. However, that was quitter talk. One look at my sheet, one look at Black Hand membership, and I knew what I had to do. It was time for the Sword of Cain. Not that one, Warhammer fans. Sabbat Toreador and I decided to use the main benefit of Black Hand membership, which is to call in other members of the Black Hand to support you. Okay. Sabbat Toreador was able to call in 5. However, everybody was seemingly shocked when it was revealed Gangrel was a hero of the Black Hand, with a reputation so great and deeds that were so badass that he could call in 12 of his own henchmen, 12 of their heaviest hitters, with a van full of weapons and armour. It was finally revealed to others that the Gangrel was involved in many battles and earned a heroic reputation among the Black Hand, after going on a diablerizing spree that lowered his generation from 13 to 9. Importantly, both Sabbat PCs could call in this help twice. Dude, you just got an army. It's like, well, the gloves are coming off. Alright. We were 19 Black Hand Sabbat with combat armor, weapons, incendiaries, explosives, and we were freshly fed. We then assaulted the police station. A large shootout followed. However, humans with pea shooters weren't much concerned to armed vampires with disciplines like fortitude and celerity. Yeah, for those of you who are all confused because it's the masquerade, you gotta protect the masquerade. No, Sabbat don't. Sabbat literally don't. They go out of their way to break the masquerade if they can. These two have been playing very light touch Sabbat, vampires. They've been being very, very hands off. But now the gloves are off, and this is what the Sabbat do when the gloves are off. Clearing out the station, we made sure to kill everything that smelled faintly like a vampire, killing all the ghoul police and several criminals who had been ghoulified in custody so they could be released back into their gangs later. This ended with us freeing our contacts, looting everything useful that was not nailed down, and escaping in our van, along with a new armoured van donated by the police. This sparked an uproar from just about everyone. The Camarilla players were whining a lot about having killed so many of their ghouls and kicked the ever-loving hell out of their investment in that police station. The station was essentially the linchpin of a lot of their planning. The Kwai Jin were upset that we could pull off that hit at all. As such, as they complained, it was all above board, with maps and dice and the GM not pulling punches. They all began saying some variation of, "Well, that shouldn't be possible. You broke the masquerade. Everybody will come down on you." To which Sabbat Toreador, GM and myself all shrugged and went, "Do it then." Yeah, dude, do they not even know you're Sabbat? You couldn't give two shits about the masquerade. At this point, GM was really just a true neutral deity watching the chaos and calling for dice rolls. As he should be. As he should be. Obviously, the terrorist assault on the police station made the news. Police from another precinct were out in force, and the only reason the National Guard were not deployed was because Ventru did not want that attention on them either and pulled strings to ensure that did not happen. They were, however, openly hunting us down now. The issue was they had lost their main enforcers, as all of their remaining ghouls were information and service ghouls, not really good for fighting. They did run the news story pretty hard though, which tipped us, in character, off to the fact that the news station was run by the Camarilla, the Bruja specifically. That night, we just snuck in and bombed the news station. We let people flee, let the police come, then made a big show of using celerity in public whilst feeding on panicking survivors and first responders out in the open. Immediately, this set off a panic, and the Camarilla and Kwai Jin players started to realise they had to put their political battle on hold and deal with the violent barbarians burning down their city. This was made incredibly difficult, however, thanks to the loss of the news station, the police station, and all ghouls affiliated with those two resources. Kwai Jin came in clutch here, unifying the Young Asians of America activist group, whilst their Hakata allies called upon their mafia associates to stage a large grassroots recovery effort and repair the damage and enact community watch, spurring the mortals to form a group against the Sabbat. Only now did the Camarilla players begin sinking experience into combat skills as they realised they were in very hot water. Whilst this was happening, they were getting upset as Gangrel and Sabbat Toreador were kept targeting their touchstones and NPC allies to be hunted and killed or dragged off to be made into flesh monsters for Sabbat Toreador's Simsi girlfriend, sorry. During the day, having a Simsi girlfriend so funny. There's this really tall Romanian girl with really long fingernails. Just like, During the day, we sent these flesh monsters out to go on rampages, just to annoy the Camarilla. As you can imagine, hunters were showing up left and right at this point. I then pointed out a funny thing to the GM. Literally every vampiric thing in the city was a part of the Camarilla or Kwai Jin Hecata alliance. Nothing the Sabbat did was vampiric on the surface. We killed people and stuff, And maybe we even, bit them in front of people like weirdos, but we did it like mortals would. Insane mortals, maybe, but still mortals. We lived in normal places and kept a low enough profile that the GM realised there was actually no reason for the hunters to come after us, but there were plenty of footprints leading back to the Camarilla. Oh no. Okay, I have heard it said by many Vampire the Masquerade players that playing this as a Sabbat should only be for like people who are very mature, right? It should only be for people who are very, very, very mature. I think you played the Sabbat pretty much well, right? You've tried to play the game and be low-key Sabbat to be like antagonist to certain people. Maybe you might have changed and become not Sabbath later on. Do you know what I mean? But I think you've been pushed to the point that it's like, okay. You know, everyone wants to be Sabbat until it's time to do some Sabbat shit. And you are doing some Sabbat shit right now. Anyway. This finally broke the Camarilla. They lost all of their ghouls, business interests, contacts, allies, retainers, etc. And we had been shredding their humanity stats due to murdering and mutilating their loved ones. At one point, the Tremere actually ended up frenzying and killed another one of their allies for us whilst they were trying to fight off hunters. Ultimately, the Camarilla and Qui-Jin Hakata players agreed to a sit-down. Their plan is that the Camarilla, Anarchs, Qui-Jin, Hakata, and Ashira, the Ashira showed up too, but aren't super important. I don't even know who they are, so it's fine, are all meeting up in this mega casino to hash out a plan to pool their resources and deal with the Sabbat problem. As this mega casino is like a mini city club full of bars, restaurants, hotels, retail shops, and other fun stuff, there were many college kids there. These college kids caught on to what was going on, as the players were getting sloppy and trying to rush to a solution. These college kids forwarded this for information to Sabbat Toreador and Sabbat Gangrel. At this point, I talk to Sabbat Toreador and we work out a proper plan. We hosted a huge frat party. All of our college friends attended, along with several other mortal allies we had made on the side. We spiked the punch with my blood, ensuring all humans were essentially entranced and willing to comply with whatever I said. Q Gangrel going full nutcase, ranting and raving about Gehenna, the Sword of Cain, and how the Sword of Cain falls where it may. He riled up this crowd of semi-ghouls, gets them fired up with all the energy of a southern preacher going on about hellfire and damnation, and how to use it as a weapon against those who control them, oppress them, exploit them, all in order to free themselves from the shackles and lies of the elders. Before this turned into a riot, Sabbat Toreador went around with his Simshi girlfriend and began draining the cheering mob. After having already drank vampire blood, they were then promptly knocked out with shovels. We quickly buried all of the bodies at speeds only vampires can reach, then let them starve during the day. Come nightfall, the night of the big meeting, the shovelheads awaken. This is brilliant! So basically you've created like a load of blood-starved ghouls who are just like out for vampire blood now. Gangrel and Sabbat Toreador wrangled their mob of frenzied, hungry shovelheads, called in our 17 Black Hand member allies, and staged an all-out assault on the mega casino. The others had been making their own preparations, with kindred allies called in from outside of the city, a few Cathayan allies, new ghouls harvested from surviving police and private security forces, the Giovanni Mafia, and an entire biker gang. They even worked out a temporary alliance with the Hunters to deal with the larger problem. What followed was a glorious PvP battle through the casino's many levels and regions, resulting in colourful shootouts, explosions, and bloodbaths. There was one main issue, however. The Camarilla and Qui-Jin wanted to somehow end this mess and conduct a massive damage control and PR campaign to cover the whole thing up. It was such an extreme problem, the Special Affairs Division, an FBI subgroup backing the Hunters, was more than willing to help stage the cover-up. The Sabbat, however, were there for the body count. Between the explosives we brought and the shovelheads killing literally everybody they saw, it was more of a terrorist attack than a fight. All was not perfect though, as Gangrel was a bit carried away by his love of Cain and took quite a beating. Really, Sabbat Toreador was the hero of this battle. However, Gangrel got to do one very important thing. He hunted down Toreador Child. That little brat ended up getting mauled again, and this time was consumed blood and soul. It did not offer any benefit, but Gangrel hated that kid in particular. Yeah, all he wanted to do was be friends. At the start of this entire story. Shortly after, Bruhar knocked Gangrel into torpor. Ventru, with high fortitude, was able to endure a ton of damage and actually ground Sabbat Toreador down in a war of attrition. Hilariously, the battle was only won thanks to Sabbat Toreador's Simshi girlfriend, our Black Hand allies, and then winning the last hold-up battle with the Camarilla and Kwai Jin. Simshi girlfriend was in her horror form, when she ended up butchering the last of the resistance and ultimately led the frenzied pack away from the casino into the night. The GM gave an epilogue where our characters were healed and awakened from torpor a few months later. Due to our high enlightenment scores and blood being fed to us by Simshi girlfriend, being Simshi, she gets a few ghoul families to move to the city and help stabilise things. The Sabbat are established as rulers of the city. The rest of the players quickly become upset, however, as they essentially lost the campaign. They were talking about how the Camarilla would never allow this to happen, and it didn't make sense, and that we should have been stopped, to which the GM pointed out to them, well, this is what the Sabbat does, and explained how they were playing the consequences to and resistance against our actions. Whenever they whined about what would happen, they were the ones who were supposed to do it as the opposing power. Okay. Then something I will never forget, sorry, I've been talking for a while now, so my mouth's getting a bit... Then, something I will never forget, Toreador Child begins talking about how unfair it is to structure the game around PvP like this, and how it ruined the game. The cheek. The absolute cheek. GM rightly pointed out that it was our choices that made the campaign this way, since we all went off into 3 distinct plot threads, despite early attempts to connect us as a single whole, and that we, altogether, made those plot points competitive. Then, the GM made up for all of the BS he was seemingly ignoring when he called them out for targeting Sabbat Toreador and I, instigating conflict with us and trying to sabotage our third of the story. He did not mince words. The game turned into a PvP deathmatch because they started hostilities with us by directly harassing and counteracting our story. Everybody clamped up at this, let out a few defeated grunts, and left the voice call. They were all whiny about it, and GM asked Sabbat Toreador and I if we had fun, and we were both pumped as fuck due to that ending, and getting back at the Kindred pigs, who tried to hide behind their power and status, only to whimper and crumple when faced with real might, in other words, role-playing and motherfucking Sabbat. Things have been pretty cold the day after the big finish. I'm not sure how the other people in the server are going to be, but I thought this awesome story was one to share. I'm not sure if the PvP focus and bummer ending make it to a horror story, or simply how Vampire the Masquerade is meant to be played. What do you think? Happy gaming, Liam. Okay. I'm going to say, dude, that I think it's a bit of both. And I think Vampire the Masquerade is kind of set up to encourage games like this eventually, if you start playing it that way. But also, I think everybody involved in this made for an amazing story. They may have lost the campaign, but they're never going to forget playing in this game. You know what I mean? Like, never ever. Where is this server, by the way? I want to play on this server. That's amazing stuff. Anyway, hope you all had a wonderful time. I will speak to you on Sunday, where we're going to be rebuilding the Imperial Fists. Ooh, yeah. And then on Monday, we'll be back for more Hobby Nightmares. And on Tuesday, we'll be having a little talk with our friend Amber King and doing the second part of what your Warhammer 40k army says about you. So I'll see you then. Have a good one. Bye now.